drops to the greatest hits. This is Trash Can Tidbits.
Hey there, everyone. It's Beaton, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Trash Can Tidbits. I know it's been a while, hasn't it? I took a break from YouTube because of some things that happened to me in a very short time period, and I felt it hindered my creativity, and a mental recharge was definitely needed. But I'm a trooper, and I'm back to bring some more fun trivia for you all. Now, last time I asked the question, which animation for the 3D characters in GoldenEye was missing from multiplayer? The answer is the crouch animation. Although the team at Rare had captured all the movements for the NPCs in the game with their own motion capture system called a flock of birds, when multiplayer was added at the last minute, they couldn't go back and record the motion of a character moving around in a crouch animation. As a result, the models just slide around on the floor. Again though, this didn't stop the game from becoming a hit, no small part due to its multiplayer. Now with that addressed, let's begin with fact number 1. Did you know that the addition of friendships in the Mortal Kombat games came about from the media attention the original game got? Not surprisingly, when the first Mortal Kombat game was released, its graphic depiction of blood and gore garnered a lot of controversy, especially when it and other violent games of the time were subjected to a congressional investigation, which ultimately resulted in the creation of the ESRB system we have today. Beginning with Mortal Kombat 2, to make fun of the controversy, the programmers added finishing moves called friendships, where instead of fatalities, the characters would instead give a funny gesture of peace to their opponents. For example, Liu Kang would perform a disco dance and Johnny Cage would give an autographed photo. Babalities, where the opponents were turned into a baby, and animalities, where characters were turned into animals for their finishing moves, would be added in further games. Fact 2. Did you know that the makeup for the Phantom of the Opera was designed by the same guy who did the makeup for the Elephant Man? Christopher Tucker was a makeup pioneer whose big claim to fame was designing the extensive prosthetics to transform John Hurt into the Elephant Man in 1980. The first Oscar for Best Makeup was presented in 1981, which was given to Rick Baker for An American Werewolf in London. There are still a lot of critics who think Tucker's work for Elephant Man was completely overlooked. Despite that, 6 years later, he was hired to design the prosthetic makeup appliances to turn original cast member Michael Crawford into the Phantom of the Opera. Throughout the decades, the Phantom's makeup was streamlined to be less laborious to put on and take off for every performance. Other notable movies Tucker worked on were the 1984 horror fantasy The Company of Wolves, which featured fantastical werewolf transformations, as well as turning Terry Jones into the horribly and disgustingly obese Mr. Creosote in Monty Python's The Meaning of Life. Fact 3. Did you know that prior to getting the part of Danny Zuko in Grease, John Travolta had appeared in a touring production of the musical as a different character? In the early 70s, years before starring in movies or even on television, Travolta had gotten his start in several musicals, including a show on Broadway called Over Here, which had songs by the Sherman Brothers, the same team that wrote the songs for Disney films such as Mary Poppins and The Jungle Book. It was in a touring production of Grease where he played Duty, one of the T-Birds who sang the song Those Magic Changes. When the Grease movie came along in 1978, in the wake of Travolta's breakout role in Saturday Night Fever, he cemented his star status by playing the lead role of T-Bird head honcho Danny. While the song Those Magic Changes was sung in a different scene in the movie and not by Duty, there was a moment in the scene, the dance at the gym specifically, where Danny actually sings along to it, which I'm sure for Travolta himself was a full circle moment. Coincidentally enough, Grease, the movie and the Broadway show, as well as Over Here, were choreographed by Patricia Birch, who must have been one of the people that took notice of John Travolta's talent from the get-go. Fact 4. Did you know that the producers of the Incredible Hulk TV series from the 70s originally wanted the Hulk himself to be red instead of green? Show creator and producer Kenneth Johnson saw green as the color of jealousy and wanted the character to be red because he felt that represented anger. He even had a conversation with Stan Lee about it, but Lee refused his request for a good reason. When the original comic was being printed, the Hulk was actually gray, but the printer was having trouble making the color consistent enough. Green was chosen instead because it made the Hulk stand out more. Nevertheless, even though Hulk was never red on the show, that didn't stop Marvel Comics themselves from creating a red Hulk character decades later. Fact 5. Did you know that Star Wars The Phantom Menace used some very clever trickery to fool you into thinking that Natalie Portman played both Queen Amidala and Padme at the same time? It's established later in the movie that Padme, the Queen's handmaiden, is actually the real Queen, and employs a decoy at certain times. Contrary to popular belief, although websites at the time maintained that Portman played both the Queen and Padme due to split-screen photography when both characters are on screen together, this is not the case, as they did employ a look-alike actress. In this case, a very young pre-Pirates of the Caribbean Keira Knightley. Both actresses, who were teenagers at the time, looked exactly like each other, and would easily fool anybody whenever each was made to look like the Queen and vice versa. To add to the authenticity, to make them both sound older when they are dressed as the Queen, they took voice lessons to make them sound more regal, though their voices were pitched lower in post-production. Knightley's own mother was even fooled when she visited the set, as she couldn't figure out who was who either. Fact 6. Did you know that since Zootopia 2 came out, and due to the popularity of Gary the Snake, there was a brief surge of people buying actual pit vipers as pets? Pop culture is very different from reality, however, because just like in the movie, pit vipers are poisonous, and you must be a professional to handle them, which I'm sure a lot of people were not. Most, if not all, the snakes that were purchased were either returned or released into the wild, which is even worse because, hello, runaway snakes in unfamiliar territory can really mess up the ecosystem. This is not the first time that the popularity of animal characters in a Disney animated movie led to a brief uptake in purchases, only to result in death or injury for the pet and possibly for the owners. Finding Nemo saw a slew of people buying clownfish and blue tang, but because they thrive in a different type of water, the fish often died within a very short time. Even 101 Dalmatians posed a problem because real Dalmatians are hard to train and display bad behavior around children. I cannot stress this enough. Do not get an exotic animal unless you are a trained professional or you know exactly what you are doing. Just because an animal is popular in animation does not mean you should actually care for one in real life. Fact 7. Did you know that the specially made clothes for Sean Connery for his time as James Bond were rather extraordinarily comfortable despite the wear and tear they took? For his debut film, Dr. No, the movie's director, Terrence Young, wanted Bond's suits to have a special feel but still look good on film despite the numerous action scenes that were filmed throughout. To that extent, Young and Connery went to London's famous Savile Row, designer shopping capital of the UK, and settled on the prestigious Turnbull and Asser to provide James Bond's wardrobe. The fabrics the tailors used were specially designed to be comfortable, flexible, and easy to put on and take off. Terrence Young even reportedly asked Connery to sleep in his tuxedo to get a feel for them. Connery obliged and came back the next day to say that the tux was indeed as comfortable as it looked. After Connery left the role and George Lazenby sought the part for himself, he reportedly came to Turnbull and Asser, which had one suit left that was made for Connery but wasn't used. Though there were some minor adjustments to accommodate Lazenby, it fit him perfectly as well. Fact 8. Did you know that two actresses who have often been mistaken for each other would not only star in the same movie, but also star in separate projects where one would play the writer of a certain book and the other would play the lead protagonist from said book? British actress Emma Mackey, who broke onto the scene in the Netflix series Sex Education, would sometimes be mistaken for another actress, Margot Robbie. Robbie would likewise be mistaken for the other as well, and they would eventually be featured together in Barbie. A doppelganger scene was even planned, but behind-the-scenes info shows that once they got made up as their respective Barbies, they actually looked too different. Nevertheless, Maggie would go on to play the author Emily Bronte in the 2022 film Emily. The events portrayed within would provide inspiration for her seminal novel, Wuthering Heights. Margot Robbie, meanwhile, would later star as main protagonist Kathy Earnshaw in her own adaptation of Wuthering Heights in 2026. A very steamy version, to say the least. I'm being kind. Coincidentally, both Barbie and Wuthering Heights also involved Emerald Fennell. Fennell acted in the former, and she directed the latter. Fact 9. Did you know that Steven Spielberg notably got to work with the director of the movie that had beaten his own at the Academy Awards? In 1982, Spielberg directed E.T. the Extraterrestrial, a movie regarded as one of the best of all time and a large frontrunner for Best Picture that year. It notably went up against another classic movie, Gandhi, the biopic of the legendary Hindu leader who non-violently fought for India's independence. That movie was directed by Sir Richard Attenborough. Attenborough not only beat Spielberg to Best Director, but Gandhi also notably beat E.T. for Best Picture. While Gandhi is an excellent film, many people felt that E.T. was the better film, including Attenborough himself. Fortunately, there was no bad blood between the two directors, and Attenborough himself would memorably appear as an actor as the enigmatic entrepreneur John Hammond in Spielberg's Jurassic Park. And going back to Mortal Kombat for Fact 10, did you also know that Nintendo put in a feature for Mortal Kombat 2 that other ports haven't really shown? Nintendo infamously took out all the blood and fatalities from their SNES port for the first Mortal Kombat, something that hurt sales. They learned their lesson and not only included all the graphic details for the Mortal Kombat 2 port, but added an almost overlooked feature. One of the game's stages, the Pit 2, has always had the distinction of having a stage fatality where you can punch your enemy off and they fall to their death. All versions have had a top-down view of the character falling and the scrolling ground effect appearing to come closer. But for the SNES release, the scrolling effect of the stone ground pivots at a slight angle and is not stationary, making the shot a bit more special. To the best of my knowledge, even though it's a minor feature and not many other people would notice, no other port of Mortal Kombat 2 has had this feature for the Pit stage fatality. And here's today's trivia question. The Silent Hill franchise takes place in a spooky town enveloped in a mysterious fog that houses not just scary monsters, but also allegorical and simulacra-style figures based on trauma of the series' numerous protagonists. But not many people note that the spooky, empty, and eerie nature of the title town takes some inspiration from an abandoned North American town. My question to you is, which American town was Silent Hill partially based on? And there we go for this episode. Thank you all for being so patient and supportive of me for these last few months while I took a much-needed hiatus. I'm still not 100%, but I hope to continue to produce some more content for you. No rush, of course. And as always, please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and ring the bell to be notified for future videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.